So today I went to my local butcher and picked up this bone-in ribeye. Now when I was thinking what to do with such a beautiful piece of meat, only one thing came to my mind. Dry aging. Now although I've had dry aged steaks many times before at restaurants, I've never actually done the process itself. So I got all the materials I need and today we're going to dry age this ribeye. Now when looking at this beautiful piece of meat, it's clear that there's a lot of marbling. And there's also a big fat cap here on the top. And when I went to my butcher to buy this piece of meat, I told him to leave this on because it's the best for dry aging. After we let this sit for about 30 days, it's going to develop a bark around the outside that we're going to need to cut off anyways. So having this unedible fat gap here will help us save the most meat possible. So we're going to leave this whole thing on. Our steak is ready to be dry aged. So I'm going to set this aside and wipe off my work surface. Now normally when dry aging a steak, it's put in a cold place and exposed to the open air. Now the only problem with that is it will stink up your entire fridge and the smell will be horrible. So what I have here are these UMAI dry bags. Basically these bags let out moisture from the steak and will prevent bacteria from growing and also won't stink up your fridge. Now there's a lot of ways to actually vacuum seal this bag closed, but for today's video I have a vacuum sealer. So we're going to start by getting our vacuum sealed bag, opening a few inches off the end, and then sliding our steak right in. Then we're going to get our vacuum sealer, open it up, and we're going to put this little piece of cloth at the end of the bag so it can seal properly. Now we're going to close it, turn the knob to operate, and let it do its magic. Now our steak should be fully sealed and ready to go, so we can open back up our machine. So now as you see, we have a fully sealed steak ready to be put in the fridge. So now we can get a cooling rack that will fit in our fridge and place our steak on top. Now in researching how to dry age steaks, I was kind of unsure why this step was necessary. But it makes sense to me now because there has to be airflow around the entire steak. So this is going to have to sit for a while in my fridge. More specifically, probably about 30 to 35 days. So today is March 16th, which means me and this guy probably won't be seeing you until about April 18th, which is my birthday. So me and this guy will see you in about a month. And a haircut, and 35 days later, we're back. Now we can genuinely admire this beautiful steak. So first, let's get this wire rack out of the way so we can cut open our steak. So taking my very sharp Damascus knife, I'm gonna cut this open. Now right off the bat, when I open my steak, I don't want to contaminate my work surface. So I'm gonna lay down another cutting board so we can properly handle our meat. So looking at this thing, it's a beauty. And it smells delicious. From what I can see on the outside, we've achieved that perfect layer around the steak. But looks aren't everything, so let's see what's inside. So I'm going to flip the steak over, and I'm going to cut following these bones right here. So again, taking my very sharp knife, I'm going to start wedging my way down. OMG, this looks so good. You know, being that it's my first time dry aging a steak, I actually think I did pretty good. I mean, as you can see, we have this black pellicle on the outside, and we have this beautiful meat on the inside. What's interesting to me is that it actually got a little less red, and feels far more tender. Man, just look at that marbling. So right now we have half of a prime rib, but we still have to cut it into steaks. So taking my knife again, I'm gonna cut this into steaks. Now that's what I'm talking about. So as you can see here, we have this nice steak, but it still has this layer of pellicle around the outside, which is pretty much just rotten steak. So taking my knife again, I'm going to trim off all these unwanted pieces. Now after all the trimmings are done, this is what it looks like. So now I'm going to go ahead and trim all the rest of the steaks and save them for later. So now after all the steaks are done, this is what we got. Now as you can tell, these steaks got much smaller. And that's simply because of how much steak we had to cut off. But trust me when I say it's going to be worth it. Now I'm going to be dry brining these steaks in the fridge for a few hours before I cook them. So I'm going to get my wire rack back, place my steaks on, and hit them with a good amount of kosher salt. The salt is going to pull out the moisture from the steak, and it can let us develop a better crust. So I'm going to put these guys in the fridge and check back in 1 hour. So now as our steak is brining in the fridge, I'm going to make a quick compound butter. So I'm going to start with 1 stick of butter and take it out of the plastic. And I'm going to place this in the microwave to melt for 30 seconds. So now that our butter is fully melted and out of the microwave, we can take some fresh cloves of garlic, put it in our garlic press, and squeeze it straight into our butter. We're going to do this with about 3 cloves. Then last in this butter is some dried thyme. And just like that, we have a simple compound butter to baste our steaks. Speaking of our steaks, they're done. Just look how beautiful this meat looks straight out of the fridge. Now before we put these steaks on the grill, we need to finish seasoning them. So I'm going to go in with some black pepper, garlic powder, chili powder, and lastly some fresh lime zest. And never forget to season the other side. Now once these steaks are fully seasoned, they're ready for the grill. And now, me and these guys are outside. So to cook these steaks, we're first going to be searing them on the hot side. And then we're going to put them over here on the cold side and cook them until they reach an internal temperature of 135. So let's get started. So these will need about 2 to 3 minutes per side to develop that nice crust. So for now, I'm going to shut this grill and check back in 2 minutes. Okay, so after about 2 minutes on the first side, we're going to give these a nice flip. And we're immediately going to start basting these with our compound butter. Oh my goodness. Now once these get a nice sear on both sides, we're going to move them to our indirect heat side. Now once they're on the indirect side, we're going to continue basting to get that juicy internal. Now a quick temp check says 135 and we're done. Oh my gosh. This looks so unbelievably delicious. And smells so good. That mix of seasonings we put on there, plus that nutty dryage smell, you can't beat it. Now the moment of truth, time to cut her open. How good does this look? Yes, some of you may say it's underdone, but to me, that is perfect. So I'm gonna go ahead and slice all these steaks, and then lay them out to be taste tested. Now of course, when our steak is done, we're gonna hit it with a little bit of flaky salt. And I have a torch right here, so why not light it up? Just for that little bit of extra char. Now finally, it's time for the taste test. Here we go. I'm sorry for talking when I'm chewing, but this is the best steak I've ever had. If you think I'm joking, you have to try this out for yourself. This has literally so many flavors going on at one time, and far beats any other steak. It might not be a tenderloin, but this is so tender. Obviously, you guys can't taste the food through the screen, but you have to believe me when I say this is so good. I would highly recommend trying to dry age a steak. You just throw it in the fridge and forget about it for 30 days, and it comes out so delicious. If you guys want to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel.
20 out of 10. Best meat I've ever had.